Hi, my name is Fred Kemp and I'm president of Usreel. Today I would like to show you our revolutionary new casting reel, the SuperCaster 1000 Pro. While the reel initially appears similar to other casting reels at first glance, upon closer inspection you notice that there's no level wind eyelet in the reel. In addition, there's a lot of other radical new technology. Here we can see how the patent pending level wind works to lay line evenly on the spool when the reel is in the retrieve mode. This is the angled bar level wind, able for short, in action. Some anglers simply refer to the able level wind as the seesaw level wind because of its repetitive rocking motion. But either way, the true benefits of this system come into play when the reel is in the casting mode. And this is where the SuperCaster is in a league of its own. Simply put, when casting, the lower friction of the able seesaw level wind allows you to cast and pitch farther with lighter lures and also do it with less backlash. I know this sounds like a pretty bold statement, but in this presentation we will prove to you why this is true scientifically because of simple physics principles. The problem with all other casting reels is that the eyelet causes a lot of side-to-side friction on the line during the cast. As the line comes off the spool on traditional reels, sometimes the line is coming off the spool directly behind the eyelet. But most of the time, the line is coming off the spool at an angle. Because the spool is so close to the eyelet, the angles during a cast may become very sharp and occur more than 20 times in a long cast. These angles cause friction that reduces casting distance and increases the amount of effort required to make a cast. Anglers are so used to this friction, they don't realize how much more energy is required to make a cast and how much the casting distance is reduced by it. That is, until they fish with a reel that doesn't have it, like the SuperCaster 1000 Pro. The SuperCaster has a three-part solution to these traditional eyelet problems. The first part is the able seesaw level wind. It reduces friction dramatically because line is not forced to funnel through a small level wind eyelet, but it is simply allowed to flow more directly from the spool to the first eyelet on the rod. The second part to this three-part solution is the reverse rotation spool. The spool turns the wrong way, which actually turns out to be the right way for several reasons. If you look closely at the spool, it turns in the same direction as the handle. This is the opposite of traditional reels and means that the line is coming off the bottom of the spool instead of the top. There are several advantages to the reverse rotation spool. It's easier to put line on the reel because you don't have to feed line through an eyelet. The reverse rotation also helps provide a small angle during retrieve to couple with the seesaw level wind. But most importantly, U.S. reel engineers have discovered that backlashes are less likely with the patent-pending reverse rotation spool. We'll come back to this in a little bit. The third part of the SuperCaster three-parts casting solution is that the level wind height can be adjusted. The level wind during a cast provides a proportional braking force on the line, just like the centrifugal brakes brake the spool. When the level wind is in the lowest position, this braking force is minimal and the SuperCaster will outcast other reels, assuming all other things are equal, such as the tension control setting. In the highest position, it's like adding another brake shoe and allows for less backlashing with excellent casting distance. Here is an example of how you might use the level wind height adjustment in a typical fishing day. An angler might have the level wind in the full down position for his heavier lures, in the middle position for his midweight lures, and in the highest position for his lightest lures. This adjustment is easy to make simply by pushing on the level wind adjustment button and turning. SuperCaster casting reels reduce pesky backlashes. There are three reasons for this. You don't have to cast as hard with a SuperCaster. Put another way, the energy required to cast is less. This easier motion is less likely to cause a backlash right off the bat. Number two, the able level wind system reduces backlashes if a light thumb pressure is kept on the spool throughout the cast. The reason is that if a backlash begins, the line starts to bunch up on the spool, just like always. However, when the backlash line is running into the thumb and the thumb is lightly touching the spool will automatically slow down without the angler having to do anything else. In other words, an educated thumb is not as important with the SuperCaster if the angler maintains a slight thumb pressure during the cast. Number three, backlashes are sometimes created on traditional reels when the angle of the line coming off the spool is high. This can cause the line coming off of the spool to momentarily catch on another line wrap and cause the spool to hiccup or hesitate and then speed up quickly to catch up with the outgoing line. This speeding up can often be the beginning of a backlash. If you've ever made 100 casts without a problem and then all of a sudden have an unexplained backlash, even though you've done nothing else differently, this could be the reason for that backlash. With a SuperCaster, this type of backlash is rare because the line comes off the spool more directly to the first rod guide. Because the SuperCaster is so revolutionary in its design, here are a few questions that are commonly asked. Is it hard to learn to cast a reel with the spool rotating in the opposite direction? Now, a lot of anglers think that the spool rotation will require a change in their casting. In reality, there is no learning curve for guys who already know how to use a casting reel. In fact, I've handed a SuperCaster rod and reel to hundreds, maybe thousands of anglers who cast the reel, and then I ask them, well, what do you think of the reverse rotation of the spool? And they look down at the reel surprised and say, what are you talking about? Having never noticed a difference when casting the reel. Many fishermen also wonder if the level wind will work with light lures and slack line conditions. The answer is we have yet to see a condition in fishing that the level wind does not work just fine. Any lure that is heavy enough to be cast with the SuperCaster provides enough resistance to allow the Able Seesaw level wind to work. In addition, there is no problem with lures that require a lot of action, such as topwaters, jerkbaits, and other lures that require the angler to alternate between slackline and tension during a retrieve. Will line cut into or mar the level wind, such as when you have a big fish on? No, the level wind bar itself is coated with a super hard titanium nitride coating that protects the level wind in the harshest conditions. Here is a picture of a 42-pound black drum one of our engineers caught when testing a SuperCaster. This fish made numerous runs on heavy braided line, and the level wind, already heavily tested in the lab, was unaffected by the fight. People often ask, what is an internal gear system and why is it necessary? Traditional reels use two external gears to drive the spool. The SuperCaster uses a radical new internal drive gear system that reverses the rotation of the spool. One added benefit of this type of gear system is that the pinion gear is positioned inside the driving internal gear. This system reduces the size of the reel considerably because the gears take up far less space. The SuperCaster 1000 Pro, for example, has a fast 7.1 to 1 gear ratio, but it does not need the deep drop-down gear casing as is necessary with traditional gears. Who came up with this design? This level wind concept was inspired, designed, and engineered by the Usreel engineering team that included Bob Benzinger, the father of free spool casting reels, and well known in the industry for innovation and better designs since the 1950s. Who is using the SuperCaster? Although new to the market, more avid fishermen, tournament anglers, and pros are seeing the dramatic advantage of the SuperCaster casting reel system and are simply reaching fish they couldn't before. Anglers such as veteran tournament winner Jim Akins. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this short video on the revolutionary new SuperCaster 1000 and 1000 Pro. These reels simply outperform the competition. SuperCasters allow you to cast farther than other reels, cast and pitch lighter lures, and do so with fewer backlashes. Thank you for watching, and good fishing.